So in this episode of How It's Rendered, we are going to be making Ritz crackers, aptly named because just like crack, I am addicted to these crackers. Anyhow, we start off with a simple cylinder and reshape and bump the resolution to get our general shape. We then generate a radial gradient along the surface which can be tiled by some arbitrary amount and remap to get this custom gradient, where the tiling is going to drive the number of indents along the rim. I then smooth out this mesh by first applying a smooth remesh for both those rounded edges along with the extra geometry, and then invoke a gradient along the z-axis to further round out the rim. We then generate a sphere along with an arbitrary number of additional ones in a circle to invoke this distance map. It's used to first pinch the mesh in those zones with the correct rounding, and then these spheres are replaced with cylinders that pass through our mesh and are then used to boolean out these alluring Ritz cracker holes. For the final details, I first smooth out the mesh again by using some more remeshing. I generate a random noise texture to slightly displace our cracker, and by distributing points along the surface, we can spawn in some cubes to serve as our salt crystals. These are first randomized in orientation and then in scale to make the results more believable. More specifically, I generated two separate passes of small and large salt crystals to get more variability. And just like that, our modeling is done, and I'd like to note that since the workflow is completely procedural, we can at any point change anything, from the number of ridges to the spacing and quantity of our holes, from our cracker displacement to the distribution and density of our salt crystals. And with our modeling finally done, we finish off by slapping the ever-living shit out of this with a brand new spanking material. We first distinguish between the cracker itself and the salt crystals, giving these different materials to work with. The cracker will be given a random noise texture along with a sort of crack map, if you will, which we can use to invoke a normal map for those extra details. We then use the local ambient occlusion of this mesh to drive the color of the cracker. And finally, by invoking a coordinate system on this mesh, we can generate a spherical gradient, break it up a bit with some noise, and darken the rim of the cracker to give a more thoroughly baked kind of look. Finally, by generating the bounding box of our finished cracker, we can easily instance this mesh upwards, making sure to add a bit of variability with our scale, rotation, and positioning of the instances. So there you go. I hope you enjoyed this new format of video. If you did, one thing I ask of you, like the video. If you did, subscribe if you want to subscribe. Do that entire engagement thing. And only other thing I want to mention is on Patreon, link in the description, you can get the blend file for this if you want to experiment around with this procedural setup. And then later this week, I plan to make a 90-minute exclusive tutorial on how to make this. Yeah.